Kevin? Kevin?
Maya, what a surprise. Assuming you're here to see Kevin.
You're never going to see him again.
Wait, what?
I never would have gave Brittany and Dr. Foster. It wouldn't have happened.
I'm not breaking the news to her. You break the news to her. They found her in an intersection playing in traffic, and she's lucky to be alive. Do you understand? You're not fit to be a foster.
Hey, look, I'm sorry if you're having a bad day, but you really can't be rude to me like that,
You can't tell my dad what I'm about to tell you, okay?
Okay. Well, as long as no one's, dead.
It's actually about sex. I just hate doing it. It's alright. Thank you.
Honey, you defiled my son.
So, I'm curious how you've been adjusting to Kevin being away at school in New York.
Scene 3 functions as the emotional and thematic hinge of the film, shifting the narrative inward and allowing Alexis's earlier rigidity to be reframed as the product of long-suppressed memory, projection, and unresolved desire, all explored within the ostensibly neutral space of therapy that itself becomes the site of revelation rather than resolution. The scene opens with Alexis insisting that she is coping well with her son's absence, emphasizing her constant contact and surveillance as evidence of care rather than control, a framing that immediately situates her within a cultural model of motherhood that equates vigilance with virtue and anxiety with responsibility. Her repeated calls, her fixation on academic focus, and her relief that her son is no longer entangled with a girl she deems distracting, all reveal a deeper preoccupation with containment, suggesting that her protectiveness is less about her son's well-being and more about her own need to regulate uncertainty. Through a queer, emotionally grounded lens, this insistence on control reads as a defensive strategy shaped by a lifetime of unacknowledged longing and fear, particularly fear surrounding other women and the feelings they evoke. The therapist's calm questioning introduces a counterpoint to Alexis's self-justifications, gently naming the intensity of her reaction and situating it within broader developmental norms, which Alexis resists by reframing the situation as a threat posed by predatory femininity, rather than a natural moment of separation and growth. Her language about girls who ruin boys and her invocation of mythological sirens reveal how she externalizes danger onto young women, assigning them exaggerated power while denying her own emotional agency, a pattern that resonates with how societies often project moral panic onto women's bodies and desires. Importantly, the film treats this projection not as villainy, but as a learned response, shaped by cultural narratives that frame women's influence as corrupting and women's desire as something that must be contained or conquered. As the therapist observes Alexis's fixation on preserving virtue and punishing attraction, the conversation moves away from surface behavior toward origin, inviting Alexis to recall an early encounter with a neighbor girl named Sabina, whose presence unsettled her in ways she could not articulate at the time. This memory is presented with notable restraint, emphasizing glances, perceived smirks, and imagined rivalries rather than concrete events, underscoring how powerful feelings often emerge not from actions, but from interpretation and internal response. For lesbian and queer women, this moment is deeply resonant, reflecting the early experiences of noticing another girl with heightened awareness, intensity, or jealousy, without the language or permission to understand those feelings as attraction. Alexis's insistence that nothing happened functions less as reassurance than as repression, illustrating how many women are taught to minimize or erase formative emotional experiences with other women in order to maintain legibility within heterosexual frameworks. The vivid dream she references, left deliberately incomplete by the film, operates symbolically as a manifestation of desire and fear coexisting, suggesting that what haunts Alexis is not transgression but recognition, the unsettling realization that her emotional life has always been more complex than she was allowed to acknowledge. The therapist's later reflection that Alexis tends to sexualize girls and assign them imaginary power reframes the entire narrative, revealing that Alexis's fear is rooted not in external threat but in her own unresolved attraction and the cultural shame attached to it. By likening Alexis to the sailors of Greek mythology, drawn toward danger they both fear and desire, the film offers a compassionate interpretation of her behavior as a struggle with longing rather than moral failure. This reframing is crucial in resisting sensationalism, as it refuses to portray lesbian feeling as deviant or predatory, and instead situates it within a broader human pattern of misdirected desire under repression. The scene's power lies in its refusal to provide easy catharsis. Alexis's quiet acknowledgement, "maybe I am," signals not resolution but the beginning of self-recognition. a moment that many queer women recognize as both liberating and destabilizing. Through this exchange, the film articulates how women's desires for other women are often redirected into socially sanctioned roles such as motherhood, protection, or moral authority, allowing longing to persist in distorted forms. Alexis's over-protectiveness thus becomes legible as a displaced vigilance, a way of monitoring the very feelings she was once forced to disown. For women more broadly, regardless of sexual orientation, the scene speaks to the cost of emotional repression and the exhaustion of maintaining identities built on denial. Alexis's burnout, evident in her rigidity and anger, reflects a lifetime of prioritizing safety, propriety, and control over vulnerability and authenticity, a pattern reinforced by social expectations that reward women for self-sacrifice while punishing them for desire. The therapeutic setting emphasizes the importance of language and witness in reclaiming interior truth, suggesting that healing begins not with confession, but with the permission to reinterpret one's own history. Within a queer cultural context, the scene critiques the persistent discomfort with women's love for one another by showing how that discomfort warps lives when left unexamined, turning potential connection into fear and intimacy into surveillance. Rather than erasing lesbian experience or sensationalizing it, the film treats it as a quiet, pervasive force that shapes identity even when unacknowledged, insisting on its seriousness and emotional legitimacy. The symbolic roles in the scene are carefully balanced. The therapist represents reflective authority that invites rather than dictates understanding, while Sabina functions as an absent presence, a catalyst whose significance lies in what she awakened rather than what she did. Alexis herself embodies the consequences of living without a framework for naming desire, illustrating how queer women in earlier generations often survived by compartmentalizing feelings that could not be safely expressed. The scene thus mirrors real-life dynamics within queer communities, where mentorship, authority, and introspection often play crucial roles in helping women translate feelings into self-knowledge. By foregrounding interiority and ethical reflection, the film positions this therapeutic encounter as an act of resistance against cultural narratives that trivialize or distort women's emotional lives. It affirms that understanding women's love for women requires patience, nuance, and respect for complexity, qualities often absent from mainstream representations. Ultimately, Scene 3 deepens the film's exploration of visibility by showing that becoming visible to oneself is a gradual, often uncomfortable process shaped by memory, myth, and the courage to question inherited stories. In honoring that process, the film offers viewers, particularly lesbian and queer women, a rare portrayal of self-recognition that is neither sensational nor sentimental, but grounded in truth, care, and the quiet resilience required to face desires long denied. Under